So, hello everyone. My name is Akila Mathis Adams, and today I will be presenting on my master's capstone project, which is exploring the spatial relationship between potholes and the social, economic, and demographic characteristics in Tucson, Arizona. So, potholes. Potholes are annoying. They're frustrating. They're a nuisance when you're driving to work. Even if you bicycle, they can be dangerous. If you're driving and actively try to swerve to avoid a pothole, you can cause an accident. And they can be expensive. Potholes can cause quite a bit of damage to vehicles. It's actually estimated that Americans spend around $3 billion a year in pothole-related repairs. So encountering a pothole is not something anyone wants to do. But if you live in Tucson, Arizona, or if you visited before, you may have noticed we have a lot of potholes and our roads aren't the best. And you would be absolutely correct. Our streets are very bad. There was a study done that looked at different road conditions in various cities and states around the United States. And Tucson came in fifth place, with 53% of our roads being ranked as poor or in mediocre condition. So we came behind some bigger, heavy hitting cities. All of the top four are in California. The first being the Los Angeles area, and then the San Francisco area, San Jose, San Diego, and then Tucson came in fifth. So yay, go Tucson. But being that I have a deep disdain for potholes, and I noticed that the area where I live, there was a lot of potholes, and it got me wondering when it came time to do my project, if there was any disparities in the location of more or less potholes, in looking at the demographics and social economics of that area. There have been studies done that have found disparities in the road conditions and location of potholes. More specifically, the study looked at roads in urban areas that have a higher white population, and then it also looked at roads in urban areas that have less white population, more of a minority population, and they found that the white urban areas, streets were still in better condition when compared to streets in the urban areas with not as much white population. So it got me thinking, if I looked at Tucson, would the same thing still apply? If I looked at people's ethnic background or racial background, if I looked at their median income, and if I looked at their educational attainment, would there be disparities in locations of more or less potholes? And I wanted to use linear regression to do that because linear regression is a great tool to find any relationship between variables, an independent variable and a dependent variable. So that was the whole premise behind my project. But before I get any more deep into what I did for my project and the specifics, I just wanted to give a quick overview and one rundown of what linear regression is, just in case you forgot or if you don't know what it is at all. So linear regression is a statistical method that's used to analyze relationship between multiple variables. It can be one variable. But the gist is that there is a dependent variable, which in my case for my project was pothole locations. And then there's independent variables. For mine were median income, the percent of the minority population, and educational attainment of the area. And I included just a little image of a basic linear regression. You have your dependent variables and then your independent variables. And then you have that red trend line which is like the best fit line for your model. And then the blue dots around it are your actual data points fitted around that line. So that's was my reasoning behind using linear regression, because it's really good at modeling relationships. And that's what I wanted to do for my project. So here is the study area. It is, this is the official city limits of Tucson. I didn't include areas that are often clumped together as the greater Tucson area. So that included, it did include separate cities such as South Tucson, Morena, or Oro Valley. And it also did not include the unincorporated areas of Pima County, such as the Catalina Foothills or the city of, Vail. And the area of Tucson is around 226 square miles. So it's a pretty big area. And this is the map that I created for the actual location of the potholes. This was obtained directly from the city of Tucson, more specifically the Department of Transportation and Mobility. So the city has a portal where the residents can report potholes they see. They can take a picture of it. They fill out the form, include the location, and then the city will go out and fill the potholes. And this is what that data is from. So the collection period for this data was beginning January 2019 all the way to December 2022. The reason why I made it kind of a bigger time frame is obviously between 2020 and 2021, there was a global pandemic and mostly everything was shut down. So I just assumed that there wasn't as much foot traffic or people going out to going to work, driving around because most places were closed. So I wanted to just make sure I collected as much data as I could. So that's why I made sure to include a bigger time frame. And there were quite a bit. There's quite a lot of records, almost just under 8,500, but there were a lot of potholes in various locations around the city. So this is the map that I created to as a visual representation of the percent of minorities in the city of Tucson. So the United States has 5 classifications for groups that are considered minorities, and that's the groups I used. So that would be African Americans, Asian Americans, American Indians, Pacific Islanders / Native Hawaiians, and ethnically, it included Hispanic, non-white identifying individuals. So those are all the people that were included when I thought of the percent of minority. And if you take a look in the blue circle, you will see that the highest concentration of minorities in Tucson tend to be in that southwestern region, which I think is really interesting that they're all clumped together in the area. And then if you look more on the east side, northeastern side, there's more white residents that reside in that area. This is the map that is for median income. So if you look at that black circle there, that is where the lowest income individuals tend to live. And it kind of makes sense because that's where the university is. So you can assume that the people that live in that area are still in college, they're college students. So they're probably not going to make as much money as individuals who aren't in school. So I guess it makes sense that they're all kind of in that little area right there. And then the more wealthy individuals tend to be on the outer edge of the city, which is interesting that they're all in that little area. And for educational attainment, how I established what that would be, I included individuals that have a high school degree or equivalent, like a GED and lower. And the reason why I included educational attainment is because generally speaking, people who have lower education attainment levels, they don't make as much money as individuals who have a college degree or a bachelor's or anything above a high school degree. And people who don't have higher education and higher educational attainment level tend to have higher unemployment rates. So that's why I included that one, because I think it's really important to consider that as a factor. And if you take a look in this blue circle here, you will see that all the people with lower educational attainment tend to be concentrated in that southwestern area. And if you remember back to the percent of minority population, it's almost exactly in the same areas as the higher percentage of minorities. So I think that's really interesting that there's some kind of correlation there. So for the results of this, all of the coefficients for the variables are negative. So what that means is as the independent variable rises, so potholes, so the more occurrence of potholes, the more the dependent variable decreases. So for example, more potholes equals that the median income in the area tends to be lower, or the more potholes that are in that area, the less educational attainment that people have. And also, if you take a look at the probability for the results, you'll see that all of them have an asterisk next to them, which indicates that there is statistical significance. So for your p-value, you want it to be low, because a lower p-value indicates that there is a more statistical significance that the relationship between the independent variable and the dependent variable aren't happening just by chance, but there's some meaning behind that. And what I mean when I say that the model did not show any redundancies among the variables indicates that I'm talking about the VIF factor, or the variance inflation factor. And what the variance inflation factor is basically, it indicates if there is any linear relationship between your variables. And the reason why you don't want your variables to have any linear relationship is because that can mess with your model, and it can make it difficult to understand if how your variable is reacting to the independent variable. So, and that can make your model unreliable and unstable. So you typically want a VIF to be 7.5 or lower. Some say 5 and lower, but if you look at all in mine are well below the 7.5 and below the 5. So it means there is no redundancies in the relationship between the variables, which is a good thing. Some conclusion that can be made from my study is that it does appear that there can be some possible inequities in the distribution of potholes around Tucson when it comes to social, economic, and demographics of the area. And I think this is a really important thing, especially when it comes time for the city to think about allocating infrastructure funds. They can look at things like this and go, hey, there are areas where there seem to be some disparities. So we should look at this area first before we start working at different areas, just to make sure that there is as equitable as possible. I think it would be interesting to expand on this study, maybe include areas that I didn't, so including Marana, including Oro Valley, Catalina foothills, and maybe even doing a study of all of Pima County, just to see if the results will still show the same thing, or even expanding it to different cities that have relatively better road conditions than we do. So like Phoenix, seeing if we did the same thing in Phoenix, would the results be the same, or would there still be disparities? So I think there's a lot that could still be done here, and I think it's something that should be more looked at, especially just to make sure everything's equitable. Any questions?